How many of you remember the Oh My Dollar Valentines? Those were fun, weren't they? You fill out a survey, a computer analyzes your answers, then it cross-references with the other surveys. For just $1, you get the name and number of your one true soulmate. For $5, you get your top 5. And hey, all proceeds go to a worthy cause. Cheer camp. Each morning over the loudspeaker came the cheery announcements. Don't forget, there's only 4 more days to turn in your surveys. Only 4 more lonely days until your true love is revealed. And every morning, a new peppy cheerleader continued the countdown. Only 3 more days. Only 2 more days. Just 1 more day. Today's the day. Then the whole squad of cheerleaders sang, Oh my dollar, oh my dollar, oh my dollar valentine. This, of course, was followed by whoops and hollers and cheers. I always imagined them doing kicks and splits and tossing their pom-poms around the attendance office. And yes, I did fill out my survey. I've been a sucker for surveys my whole life. If you ever caught me reading one of those teen magazines, I swear it wasn't for the makeup tips. It was for the surveys. Fine, some of the hair and makeup tips were helpful, but I only picked the magazines up for the surveys. The tips were a bonus. Do you remember those career surveys we had to fill out freshman year? The ones that were supposed to help us choose electives? According to my survey, I'd make a wonderful lumberjack. And if that career didn't work out, I could use my fallback career as an astronaut. An astronaut or a lumberjack? Seriously? Thanks for the help. The Valentine survey was a 2-parter. First, you described yourself. Hair color, eye color, height, body type, favorite type of music and movie. Then you put a check beside your top 3 things to do on weekends. Which is funny because whoever designed the list forgot to mention drinking and sex, which would have been the most accurate response for most of our student body. In all, there were about 20 questions. And I know, based on who appeared on my list, that not everyone answered honestly. For part 2 of the survey, it was your turn to describe what you were looking for in a soulmate. Their height, their body type, if they're athletic or not, shy or outgoing. As I filled mine out, I found myself describing a certain someone at our school. You'd think that if my answers all described one person, that person would have at least appeared in my top 5. But that person must have been immune to the cheerleaders and their cheers because he didn't end up on my list anywhere. And no, I'm not telling you his name. Yet. The moment the surveys were distributed, in 3rd period history, I bubbled in my answers. It was your typical day in Coach Patrick's history class. Decipher a bunch of notes scribbled on the board, probably 5 minutes before class started, then copy them down in your notebook. If you finish before the end of class, read pages 8 through 194 in your textbook, and don't fall asleep. And no talking. After class, I walked straight to the student body office. At the end of the counter, closest to the door, was the drop-off box. A large shoebox with a slit cut in the top and decorated with cut-out pink and red hearts. The red hearts had Oh My Dollar Valentine written on them. The pink ones had green dollar signs. I folded my survey in half, slipped it into the drop box, then turned around to leave. But Miss Benson, smiley as usual, was standing right there. Hannah Baker, she said. I didn't know you and Courtney Crimson were friends. The look on my face must have expressed exactly what I was thinking, because right away she backpedaled. At least, that's what I figured. That's what it looked like. I mean, you are friends, aren't you? My first thought was of Tyler standing outside my window, and I was furious. Was he actually showing off those peeping Tom photos? To Ms. Benson? No. Ms. Benson told me she had delivered some checks to the yearbook that morning. Taped to the walls were sample shots that might appear in the yearbook. One particular photo was of Courtney and me. You guessed it, the one from the party, With my arm around her waist, looking like I was having the time of my life, I told her, "No, we're just acquaintances." "Well, it's a really fun picture," Ms. Benson said. And these next words, I remember exactly. "The wonderful thing about a yearbook photo is that everyone shares the moment with you. Forever." It sounded like something she'd said a million times before. And before, I probably would have agreed. But not with that photo. Anyone looking at that photo would definitely not be sharing our moment. They could not come close to imagining my thoughts in that picture. Or Courtney's. Or Tyler's. Everything about it was false. Right then, in that office, with the realization that no one knew the truth about my life, my thoughts about the world were shaken. Like driving along a bumpy road and losing control of the steering wheel, tossing you, just a tad, off the road. The wheels kick up some dirt, but you're able to pull it back. Yet, no matter how tightly you grip the wheel, no matter how hard you try to drive straight, something keeps jerking you to the side. You have so little control over anything anymore. And at some point, the struggle becomes too much, too tiring, and you consider letting go, allowing tragedy, or whatever, to happen. In that picture, I'm sure Courtney was wearing a beautiful smile. Fake, but beautiful. See, Courtney thought she could jerk me around wherever she wanted, but I didn't let that happen. I jerked myself back on the road just long enough to push her off, if only for a moment. But now, the survey. For Valentine's Day. Was this just another chance to get thrown off the road? Was this survey, for the guys who found my name on their list, going to be the excuse they needed to ask me out? And would they be extra excited about doing that because of the rumors they'd heard? I looked at the slit in the top of the shoebox, too thin to squeeze my fingers through. But I could lift off the top and take out my survey. It'd be so easy. Ms. Benson would ask why, and I could pretend I was embarrassed about filling out a love survey. She'd understand. Or I could wait and see. Would most students, as I expected, get their list and just have a good laugh, thinking nothing of it? Or would they use it? Very little, I told myself, could go wrong. The survey was a joke. No one's going to use it. Calm down, Hannah. You're not setting yourself up. But if I was right, if I called it correctly, if I willingly gave someone an excuse to test those rumors about me, well, I don't know. Maybe I'd shrug it off. Maybe I'd get pissed. Or maybe I would let go and give up. This time, for the first time, I saw the possibilities in giving up. I even found hope in it. So, what were my options? I could leave the office a pessimist and take my survey with me. Or I could leave it as an optimist and hope for the best. In the end, I walked out of that office with my survey still in the box, unsure of what I was. An optimist? A pessimist? Neither. A fool. "Today's the day," the cheerleader said. Cheerfully, of course. "Pick up your Oh My Dollar Valentines at the student body office today." I hadn't decided yet if I wanted to find out who the survey matched me up with. With my luck, it'd be a fellow lumberjack. But when I walked by the office and found no one standing in line, I thought, what the hell? I went up to the counter and started saying my name, but the cheerleader at the computer cut me off. "Thanks for supporting the cheerleaders, Hannah." She tilted her head to one side and smiled. "That sounded dumb, right? But I'm supposed to say it to everyone." She typed my name into the computer, hit enter, then asked how many names I wanted. 1 or 5? I placed a $5 bill on the counter. She hit the number 5 key, and a printer on my side of the counter spit out my list. She told me they put the printer on our side so the cheerleaders wouldn't be tempted to peek at our names, so people wouldn't feel embarrassed by who they got. I told her that was a good idea and started looking over my list. "So," the cheerleader said, "who'd you get?" She was joking, of course. Half joking. I placed my list on the counter for her to see. "Not bad," she said. "Ooh, I like this one." I agreed that it wasn't a bad list, but not wonderful either. She lifted her shoulders and called my list a shrugger. Then she let me in on a little secret. It wasn't the most scientific of surveys. We both agreed that 2 names on the list matched me fairly well. Another name, one that I was pleased with, brought an entirely different reaction out of her. "No," she said. Her expression, her posture, lost all its cheeriness. "Trust me. No." "But he's cute," I said. "On the outside," she told me. She pulled out a stack of 5s from the register, put mine on top, then went through the stack, turning each bill the same way. I didn't push the subject, but I should have. And in a couple more tapes, you'll know why. Which reminds me, I haven't told you who our main man on this tape is. Fortunately, this is the perfect time to introduce him because that's exactly when he showed up. Something started buzzing. A phone? I looked at the cheerleader, but she shook her head. So I swung my backpack onto the counter, fished out my phone, and answered it. "Hannah Baker," the caller said. "Good to see you." I looked at the cheerleader and shrugged. "Who is this?" I asked. "Guess how I got your number," he said. I told him that I hated guessing games, so he told me. "I paid for it." "You paid for my phone number." The cheerleader scooped her hand over her mouth and pointed at the printout. "The Oh My Dollar Valentines." No way, I thought. Someone was actually calling because my name was on their list. Kind of exciting, yes, but kind of weird at the same time. The cheerleader touched the names we both thought were good matches, but I shook my head no. I knew those voices well enough to know it wasn't either of them. It also wasn't the one she warned me about. I read the other 2 names on my list out loud. "It looks like you made my list," the caller said, "but I didn't make yours." I asked him where on his list my name popped up. Again, he told me to guess, then quickly added that he was joking. "Ready for this?" he asked. "You're my number 1, Hannah." I mouthed his answer, "Number 1," and the cheerleader hopped up and down. "This is so cool," she whispered. The caller then asked what I was doing for Valentine's Day. "Depends," I told him. "Who are you?" But he didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because at that moment, I saw him, standing right outside the office window. Marcus Cooley. "Hello, Marcus." Marcus, as you know, is one of the biggest goof-offs at school. Not a slacker goof-off, but a good goof-off. He's actually funny. An endless number of painfully dull classes have been rescued by a perfectly timed Cooley pun. So naturally, I didn't take his words at face value. Even though he only stood a few feet away, separated by a window, I kept talking to him through the phone. "You're lying," I said. "I am not on your list." His normally goofy smirk, at that moment, looked kind of sexy. "What, you don't think I'm ever serious?" he asked. Then he pressed his list against the window. Even though I stood too far away to actually read it, I assumed he'd only hold it up to prove that my name did in fact hold his top spot. Still, I thought he must have been kidding about getting together for Valentine's Day. So I thought I'd make him squirm a bit. "Fine," I said. "When?" The cheerleader covered her face with both hands, but through her fingers I watched her skin blush. I don't know, without her as an audience egging me on, I doubt I would have agreed to go out with him that fast. But I was playing it up, giving her something to brag about at cheer practice. Now it was Marcus's turn to blush. "Oh, Okay, well, how about Rosy's? You know, for ice cream. My words came out sarcastic. Ice cream? But I didn't mean them that way. An ice cream date just sounded so cute. So I agreed to meet him there after school. And with that, we hung up. The cheerleader slapped her hands on the counter. You have absolutely got to let me brag about this. I made her promise not to tell anyone until the next day, just in case. Fine, she said, but she made me promise to spill every last detail afterward. Some of you may know the cheerleader I've been talking about, but I'm not saying her name. She was very sweet and excited for me. She did nothing wrong. Honestly, no sarcasm there. Don't strain yourselves reading into my words. Did I tell the cheerleader about what happened at Rosy's? No. Instead, I avoided her for as long as I could. And you're about to find out why. Of course, I couldn't avoid her forever, which is why, in a little while, she'll make another appearance on these tapes, but with a name. So if you want the full Hannah experience, go to Rosy's for yourself. E5 on your map. Sit down on one of the stools at the counter. In a minute, I'll tell you what to do after seating yourself. But first, a little background on me and Rosy's. I had never gone there before that day. I know, it seems crazy. Everyone's been to Rosy's. It's the cool, quirky place to hang out. But as far as I knew, no one ever went there alone. And every time someone invited me, for some reason or another, I was busy. Family visiting from out of town, too much homework, always something. To me, Rosy's had an aura about it. A mystery. In the stories I heard, it seemed like things were always happening there. Alex Standall, his first week in town, had his first fight outside Rosy's front door. He told me and Jessica about it during our Monet's Garden Cafe period. The girl, whose name I will not repeat, had her first under-the-bra experience at Rosy's while making out between the pinball machines. With all the stories, it seemed that Rosy's turned a blind eye to anything going on as long as cones were being filled and burgers were being flipped. So I wanted to go, but I was not about to go alone and look like a dork. Marcus Cooley gave me the excuse I needed, and it just so happened that I was free. Free. But not stupid. I was a little wary of Marcus. A little suspicious. But not of him so much as the people he hung out with. After peeling away from our Ollie Ollie Oxen free group at Monet's, Alex started hanging out with Marcus. And after the little stunt Alex pulled with the who's hot/who's not list, I didn't trust him. So why would I trust someone he hangs out with? Why? Because that's exactly what I wanted for me. I wanted people to trust me, despite anything they'd heard. And more than that, I wanted them to know me. Not the stuff they thought they knew about me. No. The real me. I wanted them to get past the rumors. To see beyond the relationships I once had, or maybe still had, but that they didn't agree with. And if I wanted people to treat me that way, then I had to do the same for them, right? So I walked into Rosy's and sat at the counter. And when you go there, if you go there, don't order right away. Just sit and wait. And wait a little more. Listen to the conversations around you. Are people wondering why you're sitting there alone? Now glance over your shoulder. Did a conversation stop? Did their eyes turn away? I'm sorry if this sounds pathetic, but you know it's true. You've never gone there by yourself, have you? It's a totally different experience. And deep down, you know the reason you've never gone alone is the reason I just explained. But if you do go, and you don't order anything, everyone's going to think the same thing about you that they thought about me. That you're waiting for someone. So sit there, and every few minutes glance at the clock on the wall. The longer you wait, and this is true, the slower the hands will move. When 15 minutes are up, you have my permission to order a shake. Because 15 minutes is 10 minutes longer than it should take even the slowest person to walk there from school. Somebody isn't coming. Now, if you need a recommendation, you can't go wrong with the banana and peanut butter shake. Then keep waiting, however long it takes to finish your shake. If 30 minutes go by, start digging in with your spoon so you can get the hell out of there. That's what I did. 30 minutes is a long time to wait for a Valentine's date, especially inside Rosy's diner by yourself. It also gives you plenty of time to wonder what happened. Did he forget? Because he seemed sincere. I mean, even the cheerleader thought he meant it, right? Calm down, Hannah. That's what I kept telling myself. You're not setting yourself up for a fall. Calm down. Does that sound familiar to anyone else? Isn't that how I convinced myself not to pull my survey out of the box? Okay, stop. Those were the thoughts running through my head after waiting 30 minutes for Marcus to show up. Which probably didn't put me in a good frame of mind for when he finally did show up. He sat down on the stool next to me and apologized. I told him that I'd almost given up and left. He looked at my empty milkshake glass and apologized again. But in his mind, he wasn't late. He wasn't sure I would even be there. And I'm not going to hold that against him. Apparently, he thought we were joking about the date. Or he assumed we were joking about the date. But halfway home, he stopped, thought about it, and headed to Rosy's just in case. And that's why you're on this tape, Marcus. You turned around just in case. Just in case I, Hannah Baker, Miss Reputation, was waiting for you. And sadly, I was. At the time, I just thought it might be fun. At the time, I was stupid. See, when Marcus came into Rosy's, he wasn't alone. No, Marcus came into Rosy's with a plan. Part of that plan was to move us away from the counter to a booth near the back, near the pinball machines, with me on the inside. Me, sandwiched between him and a wall. If you want, if you're sitting at Rosy's right now, stay at the counter. It's more comfortable there. Believe me. I don't know how much of his plan was thought out. Maybe he arrived with just an endgame, a goal. And like I said, Marcus is funny. So there we were, sitting in a booth with our backs to the rest of the diner, laughing. At one point, Marcus had me laughing so hard that my stomach hurt. I leaned over, touching my forehead to his shoulder, begging him to stop. And that's when his hand touched my knee. That's when I knew. I stopped laughing. I nearly stopped breathing. But I kept my forehead against your shoulder, Marcus. There was your hand, on my knee, from out of nowhere. The same way I was grabbed in the liquor store. "What are you doing?" I whispered. "Do you want me to move it?" you asked. I didn't answer. And I didn't move away from you either. It was like you and your shoulder weren't connected anymore. Your shoulder was just a prop to rest my head against while I figured things out. And I couldn't look away as your fingertips caressed my knee and started moving up. "Why are you doing that?" I asked. Your shoulder rotated and I lifted my head, but now your arm was behind my back and pulling me close. And your other hand was touching my leg, my upper thigh. I looked over the back of the booth to the other booths, to the counter, trying to catch someone's eye. And a few people glanced over, but they all turned away. Below the table, my fingers were fighting to pry your fingers off, to loosen your grip, to push you away. and I didn't want to yell. It wasn't to that level yet, but my eyes were begging for help. But everyone turned away. No one asked if there was a problem. Why? Were they being polite? Was that it, Zach? Were you just being polite? Stop it, I said. And I know you heard me because, with me looking over the backrest, my mouth was just inches away from your ear. Stop it. Don't worry, you said. And maybe you knew your time was short because your hand immediately slid up from my thigh. All the way up. So I rammed both of my hands into your side, throwing you to the floor. Now, when someone falls out of a booth, it's kind of funny. It just is. So you'd think people would have started laughing. Unless, of course, they knew it wasn't an accident. So they knew something was going on in that booth. They just didn't feel like helping. Thanks. Anyway, you left. You didn't storm out, just called me a tease, loud enough for everyone to hear, and walked out. So now, let's back up. To me, sitting at that counter, getting ready to leave. To me, thinking Marcus wasn't showing up because he simply didn't care. And I'll tell you what I was thinking then. Because now, it applies even more. For the longest time, from almost day one at this school, it seemed that I was the only one who cared about me. Put all of your heart into getting that first kiss, only to have it thrown back in your face. Have the only two people you trust turn against you. Have one of them use you to get back at the other, and then be accused of betrayal. Are you getting it now? Am I going too fast? Well, keep up. Let someone take away any sense of privacy or security you might still possess. Then have someone use that insecurity to satisfy their own twisted curiosity. Then come to realize that you're making mountains out of molehills. Realize how petty you've become. Sure, it may feel like you can't get a grip in this town. It may seem that every time someone offers you a hand up, they just let go and you slip further down. But you must stop being so pessimistic, Hannah, and learn to trust those around you. So I do. One more time. And then, well, certain thoughts begin creeping around. Will I ever get control of my life? Will I always be shoved back and pushed around by those I trust? Will my life ever go where I want it to go? The next day, Marcus, I decided something. I decided to find out how people at school might react if one of the students never came back. As the song goes, you are lost and gone forever, oh my darling valentine.